evening or good morning, wherever you are. Um, Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for everybody. It's a very great initiative that we have put together. Hopefully, it will benefit a lot of pastors and preachers like you. And the main focus is I wanted to start the awareness of um, health when it comes to the life of preachers and pastors and ministers. That strikes a very big point in our Indian context and various countries here as well. Pastors goes through a lot of stress and ministers and so on, and there is a neglect of health to take care. One of the incidents that it just happened, woke me up really to the point where I need to do something is because I lost my brother all of a sudden. That created this kind of planning and creating an awareness of what can I do in order to not to preempt our lives in falling into sickness or to the point where life is over before we do God's plan in this earth that God has called us for. So in that context, my go-to person is Dr. Manohar. Is my like elder brother for me. He is a brother for me, and we grew up together. And he's a great physician now and surgeon in UK. And he always, corrects me. He always teaches me what to do, how to do, what not to eat, what we're all probably reaching earlier 50s or late 40s or late 50s even. What can we do in this circumstances? What we can do as can we change our lifestyle? What can we do in order to stay healthy and still do the same work that we are doing, right? So um, that's the question. So now, thank you very much, Dr. Manohar, for joining us to educate us and bring an awareness to our community around the world. So take it away, and it's all yours. And we want to explore what we can do for our health.
Good. Great. Thank you, Joe. I call him Salva. So he's my cousin brother. Thank you for arranging this wonderful opportunity to share what is in my heart. It's not my intent or desire to educate the great men of God, who many of them are, who are in this group, but to bring to the awareness with some degree of specialist knowledge and experience that God has given me over the last 35 years of clinical practice, and since I became a doctor. But I must say, the nutritional or the lifestyle changes, which came with the practical experiences of my own life, I'll share it a bit later. So the the content, the title of this talk is how we are going to exercise stewardship over our mind and body. So as we, as Christians, more is targeted towards a Christian ministers crowd. So we start with the biblical foundation. The foundational verse I took is 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. It says, "Our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit." So it says, "Do you not know your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not of your own. You are bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in our body." Now, we know this verse from the younger age. Any young Christian in India would have been drilled with this verse, and they would have been beaten up with, okay, flee away from sin. Your body is belonging to God. So you only think about sin, now free from sin or avoiding sin. It also means, also, if we think about nutritional or health aspect, we think, okay, we shouldn't drink excessively, or we shouldn't be addicted to the alcohol or drugs. But we forget about one of the main areas we put our body to risk every day by actions we do with our mouth, not by speaking. Mouth also has an action to eat, so that carries the larger risk. So this is what we are going to talk today, and how we can be faithful stewards of our own bodies and health. Another Christian thinking is, spiritual thinking is, oh, God will look after everything. I will live in this world as long as God has appointed for me to live. That's a great thing, great belief. In the ultimate belief is, we all believe about our glorious hope of eternity, but we can only do purposeful things or useful things for God only in this worldly life. So we can do that only with a good health and strength. And how we can do that? How could be the diligent steward of the body that God has entrusted to us? So that's the main basis of this talk. Even though there'll be a fair bit of a specialist medical nutritional advice will be there. I'm not going to advise on any particular medicine. Immediately people think, if when they hear a clinician or a medical professional, a doctor, can you give a prescription? I can sort out things. No, I'm not going to suggest any particular drug that will do a magic wonder. But we are going to talk a fair bit of deep things, what we can do on our everyday life to enhance our health. Okay, so next. So health through the ages. We all pass through. We've been children, and in the times when we grew up in the late 60s and early 70s, and that shows our age. So we didn't have much. We have, in a middle class Indian family, we didn't have, meat every day, or we didn't have sweets every day. Sweets are a kind of very special treats, probably maybe once a month when parents get the salary, or it may be, even some cases, it may be limited to just the festive seasons. But today we have 24/7, or every 365 days a year, our children, our youngsters, and even the grown-ups have access to so much of rich food, particularly in all socioeconomic status of even India and abroad. So health through the ages. The young adults, as we grow up, we don't care about our body, and we just do whatever we want until you cross 25, 30. Nothing matters much, because our body can deal with most of things because we are active. But even that's changing. We see in the West now, and also in India, we're seeing young people in their 20s are overweight, and they are having a lot of health issues. So it is changing, but most of the times, until you cross 30, we don't have no major health issues unless there is any background medical problem. But this is the time we form 30 to 40 as a young adult. That's where we resort to certain habits. There is a saying, we're all products of our habits. What we do every day is going to determine our lifestyle. Our lifestyle is going to determine our destiny, or what's going to the outcome of our life. So the younger adults, 30 to 40, if any of you are in this group, you may be developing some good and not so good habits. So what we can do on that particular age group. And the next period is the most important period in life, midlife, from 40 to 60. This is where your body's metabolic rate goes down, and that means metabolic rate means your body's ability to deal with the energy expenditure of the body goes down. So whatever we eat, people will say, I used to eat the same thing in my 20s, but now I'm putting weight, because your body need less energy to do the same activity. And unfortunately, when we go through the midlife, our activities goes down. We're all financially becoming more secure. We're not running around. Even if you're running around, you're not physically exerting a lot of activities, and we don't burn much of energy. That's the time we develop something called insulin resistance. I will talk about that a bit later. And then that leads out to insulin resistance. Please remember this word, insulin resistance. I'll be majoring on this word throughout the next few slides. And that leads on to a lot of evil consequences, health consequences in our life. As the older adults, 60 plus, again, still people who are older than 60, still, I'm close to late 50s now, so I'm not far from 60. So even then, That's where the increased risk of diabetes and heart disease and the cognitive decline means dementia. All these things, the risk goes up significantly in people who develop insulin resistance and diabetes. So, what we can do? So, there are three major age groups we go through, but every age group, person of any age group, can benefit from making simple but consistent and meaningful lifestyle changes, both nutritional and physical changes. So, next slide. Yeah. So, what does our diet contains? So, our diet contains three major nutrients called carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Carbohydrates are the one. Carbohydrates are the go back. Carbohydrates are the one which gives us the energy, that gives the energy for our body. So if you eat some bread or rice or sugar or sweets, it gives us energy immediately. So it gives us the hype, a sense of energy. People say sometimes, most of the times around 10 o'clock in the morning, they would have had a good breakfast. Around 10 o'clock in the morning, they say, "Oh, I'm feeling a bit jittery. I can't concentrate. I'm feeling a bit cloudy in my mind. I need to go and have some biscuits or a piece of bread or some butter or some snacks." So that what does it pushes up the blood sugar. It gives us energy. So carbohydrates gives us energy, and the but what happens if we excessively take carbohydrate? That's where the problem comes. Repeatedly taking the carbohydrate, the problem comes. I'll just deal with that effect. The next slide. The next. So the other group of the main part of the food is the protein. Proteins are important for the bodybuilding and for the muscle function. And then the last one is the fats. The fats gives the again needed for the cells, blood cells, and the brain function and the hormones. So are we having a balanced diet? That's where the problem comes in the main South Indian diet. Our diet is completely filled with carbohydrate. So I used to watch whenever I go to India, particularly when you eat in the restaurants, people would eat two, three platefuls of rice, but very minimal amount of vegetables. They won't ask for the tuku, even the vegetarian meals, they won't ask for the vegetables, but they will eat loads and loads of rice. Particularly the servers used to come and ask us, we take half of that plate of rice or even less than that. They would come and ask, "Oh, you're taking all the vegetables, you're not eating any rice." So the eating excessive amount of white rice and also all of our staple diet, right from the morning to end, like dosa, idli, and chapatis, all of them are full of carbohydrates, particularly the refined carbohydrates. In our younger days, particularly growing up in a small village in South Tirunelveli district, um, we used to have something called samba rice, the red rice or brown rice. We used to hate it as children because it's like swallowing the tablets. But those kind of rice, that type of rice is a healthy rice because it comes with the coverings and polishings of the rice. It contains a lot of nutrients and vitamins and fiber. So that reduces the increase in the blood sugar rise whenever we take rice or sugar. So we also eat a lot of, when people have diabetes, when they go to the doctor in India, they say, "Oh, rice சாப்பிடாதீங்க, சோறு சாப்பிடாதீங்க, you go and eat chapatis." So chapati is not any better than rice. Particularly if you eat a lot of chapatis, it's even worse because the wheat also contains carbohydrates, but also it's more inflammatory, pro-inflammatory. That means the body produces some chemicals to attack our own body tissues, inflammation. So inflammation means the response of our body to an injury. So the wheat products cause more injury to the cells or in the bowel. It causes allergic type of reactions or even inflammatory type of reactions. And our food is generally very low in protein and healthy fats. Again, it's the medical professionals can be giving a kind of very skewed advice. When you go with a little bit of high cholesterol, they may say, "Oh, don't eat any fat, don't eat any egg, don't have any meat." Again, it's a bit of a skewed advice, not necessarily always the right advice. Then, when you ask people to avoid the sugar, they will say, "Oh, we will use the sweetness." So, also heavily sweetened drinks and bakery items. The picture down here is from a picture of a photo of a bakery near my house in Tirunelveli, called Aruvi Bakery. It's fantastic bakery. Whenever some guest come to our place, nowadays I don't go and buy sweets there, but I buy the nuts and other healthy stuff. But if you think about it, every bit of sweet, which is readily available, every street corner in India has got bakeries and the sweet stalls providing sweets for a relatively cheaper price, which is fairly affordable by most sections of the community. Previously, these kind of sweets are only affordable to people who are having money, not every day. That was our experience during our childhood, but it's not that. But what the sweets do? Um, it causes double type of damage. Every part of the sugar in the sweets is called sucrose chemically. The sucrose contains 50% glucose and 50% fructose. We used to think in the about 30 years ago in the 90s, the fructose does not increase the glucose level, so it is good for the diabetics. Even when I came to Europe first, I used to buy chocolates made of fructose and send it to my mother who had diabetes. But it turns out to be fructose is even more damaging than glucose. The fructose cannot be directly dealt with by our intestines. Glucose can be, but the fructose has to go to the liver. In the liver, it causes production of fat deposition in the liver. During that process, it creates a lot of pro-inflammatory substances, which again causes inflammation. Now, body inflammation is the fundamental um, cause for all the further evil health problems, like in the injury to the nerves as a part of diabetes, heart attack, blocking of the blood vessels, or even cancer formation. The inflammation is considered to be the one of the root causes, our main root causes.
So, I just wanted to interrupt something. Sorry to
Yeah.
bother. Now you have just halfway through. Don't eat this. Don't eat this. Don't eat this. Don't eat this. Now, what else I can eat? But now you're starting to have questions. Please, you can type in your questions on the chat. Prepare your questions. Short and sweet, one sentence. You can chat away until we finish the start, and then we can address the questions. Thank you. Continue. Amazing, amazing.
So the next, another one of the very detrimental and dangerous contents of the food items, particularly the savory sweets items and the savory items in India, is trans fats. The trans fats in larger concentration are banned in Europe and America. But the main sources of trans fats in India are dalda and vanaspati, or reused oils. Dalda and vanaspati is in most of the savory items. Last time when I went to India, there is a great sweet shop called Shanti Sweets in India, in Tirunelveli. It's famous all over India and they export. And another one is Irrittikadai Alva. Some sweet stalls they claim that they use ghee. That's fine, but most of them, but they are honest enough to say it contains dalda. If you look at the halwa packet, it contains dalda. If you use pakora, it uses dalda. If you see any of those in a savory items, most of them contains dalda. What does dalda do? It increases the shelf life. It improves that texture in the mouth, and it solidifies a bit better than the ghee, so that the things won't get broken. The broken pieces of sweets people are not going to buy. So it's useful for the vendor, and it's cheap, much cheaper than the ghee. But the trans fats used in thing it creates totally different type of problem. It creates the insulin resistance. Basically, the body won't respond to the insulin. Insulin is a normal hormone produced by a gland called pancreas. Whenever we eat something sweet, whenever our blood glucose level goes up after having a carbohydrate meal, or when we eat sweet stuff, the insulin level goes up. And the insulin brings down the sugar, and insulin converts the sugar into either fat or energy. So if the glucose is not utilized during immediately after the food by physical activity, it's going to be converted into fat. That's the reason insulin is called fat-producing hormone. But increasing if the carbohydrate intake is going in several cycles per day up and down, the insulin secretion goes up and down. And after a period of time, the body stops responding to insulin. That's called insulin resistance. So the pancreas has to put more and more insulin. So it goes like a roller coaster ride every day of the year. because unless our food habits change, that's not going to change. So when it comes to the point insulin does not no longer responds to the body does not respond to the insulin, that's when people develop diabetes, pre-diabetic status, and diabetes. So one is the high glucose load produces insulin resistance. That is bad enough. But the trans fats produces insulin resistance independent of glucose level. So that's even worse. Whenever we eat trans fats, it causes insulin resistance. It reduces the body's ability to respond to the insulin and bring down the blood sugar. And it also causes significant inflammation in the liver. And the process of the dealing with conversion of the trans fats in the body produces a lot of inflammatory substances that increase the risk of heart attack. There's one study that increasing the intake of trans fats resulted in increased risk of sudden cardiac death within the next 48 hours. So that is a definite risk on the trans fats, particularly the dalda vanaspati and the reused oils. Where are the oils reused? We use vada. When you go for a walk in South India, I used to go in Tirunelveli. Whenever we go there, go for a walk, and there used to be a nice vada shop on the street, and so delicious. Much better than vada in a 5-star hotel. But they use the oil. The oil is heated all the time. They reuse the oil. Whenever we reheat the oil, that produces trans fats. So avoid reheated fried substances. So it increases the heart attack risk. The solution, what can we do? Use the olive oil or coconut oil or even groundnut oil or nullaness, sesame seed oil. So these are all the oils, cold pressed oils. They are good. If you use sunflower oil, palm oil, they're all refined oils. You know why they're called refined oils? They have an industrial process to extract the oil from those seeds. So vegetable seed oils are mostly refined oil, and the refined oil contains a lot of omega-6 fatty acids, which are causing inflammation in the body. So two things remember, insulin resistance and inflammation. So we have to eliminate anything and everything that causes insulin resistance and inflammation in the body. So next one is the sugar, sweetness, and fructose. I briefly talked about the sugar. The sugar contains 50% fructose, and fructose increases the liver fat. So anything which made of fructose, even if people can market it, it's not going to, it's good for the diabetic people. It's not going to raise the blood glucose level, but the fructose is more evil than glucose, high glucose. So fructose is also in the Western countries. It's in corn flour, the corn syrup and artificial corn syrups, because they are cheaper to produce that, and they're all high in fructose. The dried fruits, except if in high quantities, also contains a lot of fructose. But the fructose, people may ask, what about fructose in the fruits? The fruits contain fructose. The fructose is originally called fruit sugar. But when you take the whole fruit, it comes with the fiber. It comes with a lot of other micronutrients that offsets the problem of high fructose. So the eating limited fair amount of fruits is not a problem. But if you are drinking lots and lots of fruit juice, that's a problem. So if you eat fruit, eat the whole fruit. So anything whole meal and anything which is not industrially or in a factory, they're not refined or changed, they're meant to be healthy. What about artificial sweetness? When you ask people to stop putting sugars in the coffee, whenever I go to India, if you ask for a coffee or tea in a restaurant or a coffee shop, by default they have sugar. For each small cup contains 2-3 teaspoons of sugar. It tastes like payasam or badam ghee rather than a coffee or tea. So very rarely you could feel that the bitter taste of the coffee, because it's masked by the sweetness of the sugar. And when you ask people to avoid the sugar, they say, "Oh, can I put two tablets of saccharin or aspartame or different types of sweeteners?" But every sweetener is a chemical. Most chemicals do have side effects. Yeah, from saccharin, I remember reading about saccharin causing bladder cancer in mice. We don't know how much of a risk is in human beings, and also it confuses the metabolism. Recent developments about sweetness are they alter the bacterial balance in the bowel. One of the major advances recently about the nutrition is maintaining the balance between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria in the bowel. Particularly when we use excessive amount of antibiotics without prescription indiscriminately, that destroys the good antibiotics. So don't immediately jump to have an antibiotic prescription if you have a cough or cold. The cold will go within 7 days. As soon as, whether you use antibiotic or not, there used to be a funny saying, if you use antibiotic, the cold will be cured in a week. If you don't use the antibiotic, the cold will be cured in 7 days. So
7 days.
antibiotic is the material. So um, artificial sweetness alters the bacterial balance. And artificial sweetness also increases sugar craving, sweetness of the craving for the sweets. So what is the solution? Drink water. Forget the Fanta, fruit juice, and the Coke. That it becomes a very it's a style. Style of even richness. People drink liters and liters of this bottled Coke and Fanta. I discovered something. One of our cleaning ladies in in England where we live, she said the best way to clean the toilet is get a cheap cola and pour in the toilet overnight. The pan will completely become white. And I did that. Get a cheap cola, 3 liters, pour it in the toilet. It completely cleaned the toilet pan, shining white. So I remember what Coke is doing inside the body, cola and this drinks are doing inside the body. If they're as good as the bleach chemical in cleaning things, they are doing a lot of evil things in the body. So the good thing, water, tender coconut is wonderful. In India, wherever you go, there are tender coconuts or palm fruits you can buy for next to nothing, and you can have them. And next one. So we talked about the insulin resistance. The insulin resistance is the basic fundamental problem of excessive sugar, excessive fructose, trans fats. So why I'm majoring on insulin resistance? That is the fundamental start of the evil process. So the blood sugar remains high. The early signs of insulin resistance, whenever patients come to me, I'm a urologist, so I do deal with men, particularly when they come with erectile dysfunction or impotence. That gets the attention of men, particularly in the middle-aged men, and they come to me. Oh, doctor, it's not same as what I'm used to being 20. I look at them. Well, have you looked lately I don't ask them, tell them that. Have you looked lately in the mirror? Do you look the same when you looked in 20? No. The change is the insulin resistance causes a lot of changes in the body. One of that is the belly fat, the abdominal fat, putting a lot of fat around the midsection of the body. It can start from the 20s, doesn't cause the immediate damage, but it continues. It's a cumulative damage. It doesn't happen overnight. And the sugar cravings, when the person develops insulin resistance, no amount of sugar, sweet stuff will satisfy you. Repeated cycle of, because whenever take the sugar, insulin goes up, then insulin comes down, the sugar, insulin goes up, comes down. It's a cycle throughout the waking hours. So the belly fat, sugar cravings, fatigue. So after an hour and a half after the food, they feel fatigue. They want to eat again. So sugar crashes. Dark skin pigmentations. People can develop pigmentations, darkness of the skin around the neck, the axilla, and the armpits. If people are developing that, it's called acanthosis nigricans, or brownish discoloration. The surface may look a bit more velvety, softer than the rest of the skin. That is a sign of insulin resistance. So this is the stage people will not have a clinical diabetes. Their sugar levels can be still normal. Other things like HbA1c, which is a blood test they do to diagnose diabetes, may be slightly above normal, maybe even normal. The wonder of the body is the body can compensate as long as possible. God has designed our body to survive in the midst of all the perils. Nowadays, with the civilized life, we don't have perils of droughts and food scarcity, but over the generations, thousands of years, people have gone through the natural perils, droughts, and communicable diseases, and lots of problems there. So we are designed to survive. So our body will survive, adopt a lot of adaptive changes, but with a modern living, continuous intake of food, continuous intake of glucose and glucose-based or fructose-based substances, which causes the body a lot of stress, physiological stress. And the other thing is swelling appearing around the back of the chin. I was seeing many of my friends, my age group, even a bit younger than me, around their 40s, people tend to develop swelling in the back of the ear due to the swelling of the gland called parotid gland. That's one of the main signs of insulin resistance. So people also can develop small skin tags suddenly on the body, in the neck, in the abdomen, in the tummy, in the belly. So the insulin resistance goes to the pre-diabetes, diabetes, then further risks of heart attack, stroke, dementia, and all the evil consequences over the period of 10, 15, 20 years after the development of insulin resistance. So, what can we do? So, the main thing is if we, if any, have signs of insulin resistance, even before developing diabetes, increase abdominal waist size. Ideal waist size is 90 centimeter. Even my waist size is used to go up 100, 105, now around 93 with significant effort. So the waist size is very important, particularly with the Asian, Southeast Asian body makeup. We tend to put a lot of fat within the abdomen, which is called visceral fat. The visceral fat or the abdominal fat, which is a totally different type of fat, which causes inflammation and which causes constriction of the blood vessels and leads on to high blood pressure, diabetes, and all of the consequences. So the screen the waist size, fasting sugar, and also the cholesterol profile. Don't worry about the don't have to worry much about the total cholesterol, but mainly concentrate on the triglycerides and the HDL. You know, particularly when in India, everybody put on medication. I'm not against medication, treating your cholesterol, but try to treat your cholesterol by lifestyle changes first. Then, if there are underlying diseases, yes, there are cholesterol lowering medications. So, main two aspects: fasting blood sugar and triglycerides. Screen that and see if they what level they are. Regular health checks after the age of 40, 35 and 40 and detect and act quickly. I'm not talking about simple pill solution or a tablet solution or a medicine solution. First solution is in our hands by being diligent stewards, which I'm going to say in the next couple of slides. So diet and lifestyle intervention. The first thing is simple and incremental changes in the diet. We can't change overnight, whatever the thing which has built up. So that's the same thing I tell the men who come to me. So I give them a prescription for they're coming with a problem, particularly in the sexual side. But I tell them this tablet's only for a short-term fix. If you don't change your lifestyle, that's going to progress. Same thing, diabetes, insulin resistance, erectile dysfunction, all the cardiac risk factors is going to progress unless we make meaningful change in our diet and lifestyle. So simple and incremental change. That's the word I put. You don't have to be just heroic and change everything overnight. The first thing I would suggest is forget the sugar, eliminate the sugar. It may come as a shock to many, but eliminating the sugar, it's not easy. And I'm a very sweet tooth person. And right from my childhood, I used to like sweets. One of my older cousin brothers here on this one. He's on this audience. He was 8 years older than me, and we used to, whenever we go to my auntie's house, Periama's house, we used to go and get sweets from the sweet stall, and we eat outside the house before we coming home. And we used to make loads and loads of sweets for Christmas, and we used to eat. So I'm a very sweet tooth person. But what I did over the last few years, I started reducing it, but still I was struggling with sweet craving, sugar cravings. So one of the practical way I did was if you change your the eating style for 3 weeks or even better 40 days, your taste changes. What I did was for the last Lent season, I'm not saying we may practice Lent or not practicing Lent. I'm not about that, but I took it that season to make a change. So I decided I'm not going to take any sweets. Nothing religious, pleasing God about it, but I took the season. I was making a change. So I eliminate the sugar, no sweets, nothing, no sugar. Even I eliminated using sugar in my coffee tea for several years before this. And only time I just broke that was we went. One of my cousins came from States, so we went for a meal, and we had dessert. I shared half of that. That's the only time I had a sweet the whole 40 days. But I can say the sweet affinity has gone. When you eliminate something from your lifestyle for 3 weeks, preferably even 40 days, the affinity on that thing, the habit breaks. The second thing is cut down the carb. It's very difficult in the Indian diet. Our staple is full of carbs, either rice or chapatis or parota. Parota is one thing. It was just a couple of words about parota. Parota contains a lot of dalda. So please be aware whenever you order parota, it's such a wonderful thing. When it's mixed with the gravy made of lamb or other meat, it's really nice. But most paratha stalls in India uses heavy amounts of dalda, and some people can have gastric intolerance to dalda, particularly pancreatic intolerance to dalda. They can have mild episodes of pancreatitis. So be careful about that. So cut down the carbs. How can we cut down the carbs? First, start with the amount restriction. So the amount restriction, what I mean is, instead of taking four dosa or five dosa, just drop it down to two dosa, have an omelette, or have some vegetables as a part of that. And for the same for the lunch, instead of having two plates of rice, half a plate of rice, and 1.5 plates of vegetables or some meat or some egg. No, you don't have to restrict other bits, but restrict the carb. Consistent restriction of the carb is so important, and replace protein and healthy fats. Egg is fine, and the meats are fine. So don't, people get advised wrongly. The moment the cholesterol goes above 100, 225 or 250, many health professionals in India asked to stop eating non-veg. If you don't eat non-veg, if you tell people not to eat non-veg, then what are they going to eat? They will be consuming loads of carbohydrates. So the proteins and the fats will give you satisfaction so that you can reduce the amount. And also fiber, the vegetables, salads. Preferably, we tend to start with the salad and vegetables first before we even eat any carbohydrate. So what happens is, when you have fiber first, the release of the rapidity or the speed of release of glucose into the system is slow. So that means the insulin secretion will be low. So that's what we had to be aiming at. Am I triggering my pancreas, a body, to produce more insulin by eating more carbs? So cutting down the carbs systematically. And another thing you can practice called intermittent fasting. Give the body, the bowel, a complete rest, 14 to 16 hours a day. Don't, please, if you are taking anti-diabetic medications, don't start immediately without consulting your doctor, because you can go into hypo. But if you're not taking any medication, it's perfectly safe to eliminate any food items in your mouth for 14 to 16 hours a day, which I practice in the last 3 years consistently. Well, you can relax when you are traveling or meeting other people. You don't have to make fuss about it, but you can always return back to that practice of intermittent fasting. That means it's called time restricted eating. So you eat within a window of 6 to 8 hours a day. The remaining hours, complete rest to the bowel, which gives us the body to replenish all the bodily functions and the bowel functions. And combining that with cutting down the carbs and eliminating the sugar will be the starting point, probably most decisive point you would ever take, decisive thing that you would ever take to and a pathway to good health. There's no other way to short circuit that, particularly for an Asian makeup. So first is the lifestyle. Why I put the diet as a lifestyle? People might think, oh, I'll eat all of that, I will exercise. No, you can't exercise and burn everything. One day I went for a walk for about 2.5 hours. So covered about 8 kilometers. And my Apple Watch told me that I burned about 400 calories. So 400 calories will be taken within about, say, 2 or 3 vadas or a few biscuits. So you can't exercise our way out of obesity or this all kind of evil problem. First thing is the diet. We need to control our mouth. The second thing is exercise. Exercise can be aerobic exercise and anaerobic exercise. Aerobic exercise is any exercise that will increase your heart rate. It's perfectly safe to increase your heart rate for about 50% or 70% above your baseline, or 106, 200 minus your age. That's your maximum heart rate you can go. 200 minus age. You're 50-year-old, your heart rate can go up to 150, but keep that 10% lower than that. Up to 130, 140 is perfectly safe. So you can run, walk, provided you have you don't have any significant other health problems. If you have problems, always consult a practitioner of medicine. And so that's the aerobic exercise. The increase your heart rate, your body's additional need for oxygen will be met by that cardiorespiratory response. That's called aerobic exercise. Anaerobic exercise is the resistance training. That's what the bodybuilders do in a muscle training with the weights, or your own body weight, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups. All of that will increase your heart rate, but the heart rate and respiratory rate, breathing rate alone cannot satisfy the need of the muscles oxygen need. So what it does is open up the microvasculature, small blood vessels. That gives additional help. That is done through a pathway called nitric oxide pathway, which open up the small blood vessels. That helps the additional benefit. So I go to the next one. So finally, biblical rest and stress management. So moving away from the nutritional thing, we're all, and I used to brag that I used to think we always should have a bias for action. Generally, I used to dislike people who are slow, slow to think or slow to act. But it came as with a cost. I started developing high blood pressure and putting on weight, stress, and all of that, moving, driving many people mad around me. But so that's where understanding of the biblical rest and stress management. So God. The Bible says God gives His beloved sleep and cast your burdens on Him. So what we can do, 7 hours of sleep is so important. I used to brag, if I sleep for 4 or 5 hours, that's enough. It used to be the case until I was 40. When I crossed 40, even more so on crossed 50, sleep became more important. So if I don't sleep 6 hours now, at least it causes problem. It reduces my overall energy level. 7 hours is ideal. If you can sleep for 7 hours, that'll be great. So 7 hours sleep per night important. So second thing to reduce the stress or even the emotional outbursts is the prolonged exhalational breathing. So when we breathe. Breathing out is the longer phase, and breathing in is the longer phase, and breathing out is 2/3 of the breathing in phase. So what I would say is breathing out by a count of four, breathing in by count of four, and breathe out by count of eight. So breathing out, make the expiration longer than inspiration with a halt for about a couple of seconds in between. So if we can practice that, this practice in different ways by different religions, but the scientific basis behind that is if you prolong the expiration, your body creates more nitric oxide in the lungs, which dilates the blood vessels, makes you more relaxed. And also when we breathe out, we tell our brain we are not in a fight and flight mode. So our body has got a system called sympathetic system. When we sense a danger, we are in a fight and flight mode. Our heart rate goes up and respiration go up. But if you breathe out slowly, we tell our brain, well, nothing is significant. In a stressful situation, we are on a fight and flight mode, even without any obvious danger. When we think of worry or fear about something, or being angry about something. But here, the breathing control is a way to manipulate our brain and our thinking into a mode called parasympathetic mode, from a sympathetic mode to parasympathetic mode, which is a restful state. So build in restful spells in every day schedule. Remember, Bible has got a great command, Sabbath rest. We are in the New Testament graceful period. Still, Sabbath is a good guidance. Not necessarily this helping to achieve righteousness before God, but it's not legalistic, but it's a good principle. We don't know how pastors get Sabbath. Now you're all working on Sundays, so definitely take another day as a Sabbath day. It's so important for Christian ministers. So final call, stewards and stewardship, work heartily for the Lord. Many people think health is a vanity. Bodybuilding is a vanity. Looking after your health is vanity. It's not. We can be only beneficial for God only in this worldly life. We can do that with the fullness of vigor only if we are healthy. So health is not a vanity. The efforts you take is not a vanity. The money you spend on health is not a vanity. It's a stewardship. So stay fit to finish your race for God. Thank you.
Thank you, Raja. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening in. I just wanted to bring back that slide. I just wanted to leave with one question, what you wanted to do starting today. It's very important. We all realize that, but then what are we doing about it? Are we just, okay, all right, this is another talk, I'm good with that. Or what I can do, one thing that I can do. We just wanted to take action very considerable seriously, and then say one of these actions, eliminate sugar or cut down carbs, and then slowly add on to it. We will share the recording. Thank you very much for stopping by and dedicating your time. And we'll continue in a little bit frequency of 3 months or so, and then check back again. If you're If it is useful, just convey that it is, what is your feedback and so on and so forth. All right. Thank you all for joining. May God help us to take a step towards, to something, do something about it. Let's take it serious.
Just the 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. If you're taking 2 spoons of sugar in a coffee or tea, drop down to 2. So 1, then drop down to 0. So first step is this sugar elimination. I can't emphasize the evil consequences of sugar, cane sugar in our diet. So simple, incremental and simple changes. That's the name of the game. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening, everybody. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
for
very
arranging
much.
this meeting.
Bye.
Very
For
good.
the
Thank you.
Hotel. Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Christopher. Thanks, Freddie. Thank you all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.